Just want to welcome everyone to our Everything Menopause little seminar here on this great Thursday evening. And I know some of you, and we have Chris Neal, and I will let Chris introduce himself here in a little bit, but some of you may or may not know me. I'm Dianna Marcks, and I'm up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, or wherever you guys are. I'm in Wisconsin, and let's see, I've been a nurse for over 30 years, and I'm also a personal trainer. I do a lot with nutrition, and I've owned a gym. I own Mind Body Beautiful, which is an online coaching program for women over 40 and up. And I am a mom of 3 grown kids. I have 7 grandchildren already, 5 boys and 2 girls. And I'm postmenopausal, and I know some of you are, or probably most of you are pre or during or whatever you want to call it, right? Some people say I'm in menopause, or you're at, post, or you're perimenopausal, or whatever that might be. So really glad you're here. I know you're really going to enjoy this presentation. And I'm just going to keep admitting people in. This is being recorded, so this will be in the Mind Body Beautiful private Facebook group as well for everyone. And I'll be watching comments too once it's posted. But also, if you guys have any questions during this presentation, please go ahead and put it in the chat. And if you go below on your screen or your phone or whatever you're using, there's a little icon that says chat. If you click on it, you can ask questions that way. And so I'll be watching that while Chris talks. And so enough about me. I want to introduce you to Chris Neal, and I met Chris, what hell's 3 years, 4 years?
3 years ago, yeah. I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and Chris, I'll let Chris introduce himself and tell you a little bit about what he's doing, what he does, and maybe your background and things like that. So
sure.
All right.
Thank you so much, Dianna, for having me on. I'm excited to share some stuff and hang out with you guys today. So my name is Chris Neal, and I own a hormone replacement clinic, and the name of the clinic is Vivo Health Solutions. You can check us out online and at vivohealthsolutions.com, or check out our Instagram page. Basically for myself, I am also a physician assistant. I have my master's degree in clinical medicine, and I've been working in the medical field for, I'm aging myself, I'm 20 some years, like 20-ish. I'm a patient myself of hormone replacement. But when I first became, something we were just discussing, when I first became a patient of hormone replacement myself, and I realized how much of an impact it made in my life, I realized, oh my goodness, I have to learn as much as I can about this, because I didn't learn this stuff in med school. They don't teach us this, not to this level and this depth of how important it is to stay balanced in order to feel at your best. So that began my journey, 15 years ago or so with all of this. And now I'm to the point where I'm probably the biggest geek you'll ever meet when it comes to health and fitness and hormones and body chemistry, and all of that. And encompassed in all of that is different stages of life. One of them is menopause. So that's a big deal for myself and my patients to really, and I work really hard to help my patients understand what's happening, with all of the things that go on. So education is a very, very big part of that. Dianna knows that, how big I am when it comes to education. So that's my passion. That's one of the things I like to do. And yeah, that's me.
Yes. Yeah. So thank you, Chris, for sharing. So what we're going to start out with is really what I think is important for all women, is to know really what is going on inside our bodies when we hit that quote unquote menopause, because our whole body is changing. And we have all our hormones change in adolescence, and then some of us have kids, and we have a lot of hormone fluctuations. And then as we age, we have a lot of changes, as do men. Of course, but this is primarily, I really want you, and I think all women need to know what's actually going on inside your body so you can understand it. And then some of the symptoms that you experience, you can find some relief. There are things that you can do for yourself so you don't have to suffer. Like my mom said, oh, you're going to have hot flashes for 17 years because that's what happened to me. And I said, I'm not having hot flashes for 17 years. You're crazy. And I think we know these days a little bit more, a lot more, and we're focused a lot on women's health. And I think when my mom was going through it, we may not have known much at that point. And so like Chris and I, before we started, we were talking about anti-aging, and that it is just that number, and you should take care of your body because we all are going to get older, but how do we want to live our life? And it's really,
Exactly.
exactly. So anyway, I think just starting off with kind of that pathophysiology, and what is going on with us as women get older.
So I love breaking things down as I go along. If anybody has any questions, please hit up the chat. I think we've got somebody in the chat right there. So please don't hesitate to interrupt and hit me up with any questions you might have. Pathophysiology is a great, big, exciting word. Basically, it means how does something work,
Right.
and I love looking into things like that. So one of my biggest frustrations, or maybe I have a screw loose, I don't know, but one of the things that just drives me is when people, I call it when people say stuff, like you were talking about your mom, oh,
Right.
you're just going to have such and such when you get to such and such age for 17 years, it's just going to happen. So it's like, okay,
Yeah.
how did you come up with that? Are you just saying stuff, or what is it? Where's the real breakdown? How does that happen? Why do I get hot flashes? What is a night sweat? Like, what are all of these things? And by the way, is there anything I can do about it to avoid that, or so first, we have to look at what Dianna said. We have to look at pathophysiology. How does the body really, really work? And if we're able to understand that, then we're able to take the next step in order to try and tweak things or manipulate things to get us our best life. So that's the trick behind it all. So looking into menopause, let's take a step back first. And the way I like to describe it is basically your ovaries, or a lot of the job of your ovaries are wanting to retire. They've been working for 40 some years. Every single month, are we going to have a baby? Are we not going to have a baby? Is this going to be the month? Is it not going to be the month? And back and forth. And the preparation every month to get ready to actually grow a human being, which is a miracle all to itself. The prep for that is a big deal. And finally, after a certain amount of time, usually around the age of 46 would be a little bit early, but 47, 48, 49, 50, like what happens is that it just gets tired and it doesn't feel like doing it anymore. They want to retire. So if you are out of the baby making game, or you're trying to transition to the point where you're no longer in the baby making game, is what I call it, then your hormones dictate a lot of that. So there's going to be a lot of hormonal changes there. Okay, so when you so it's important to understand, like, when you are even before premenopausal state. So like when you're 35 years old, your hormone levels in a given month are drastically fluctuating. But in the time your estrogen, for example, is the big one. If your estrogen level will rise when it's time to get your body ready to ovulate, and then it'll rise again when it's time to get your body ready to hold on to a baby or have a period. So outside of those two events, that's the part of the baby making game. Outside of those two events, your estrogen level is pretty conservative. It's not super high. It doesn't really have to be, and your body does fine. And you feel generally fine, outside of that time frame too. So when we talk about extremes of like PMS, for example, that's when your hormone levels are getting too high. okay, during that ovulation period, or even just prepping to have a period itself. So your estrogen levels are the cause of a lot of those other side effects that we don't always like when it comes to, month to month being a woman. So that's important to understand that your body is trying to transition to what your month is like outside of ovulation and prepping for a period, or prepping for a baby. Just that normal time in the month. That's what your body is trying to transition to, even a little bit less than that. But the problem is that during that transition time, it takes some time to get your body to do that. It doesn't always get it right. You know, it really doesn't, and it's not always smooth sailing. So during this retirement process, and it's the retirement, you know like if you've ever worked with someone that plans on retiring, they don't just up and retire one day. It generally takes a couple of years of them complaining, and then sometimes they'll show up to work and sometimes they won't, and then they're kind of back and forth, and your ovaries are very much like that. So sometimes your levels will be too high, sometimes they'll be too low, sometimes this and sometimes, and that every time your levels go from too high to crashing, which can happen multiple times a day, it can be all over the place, um, you have a hot flash, or you end up having a night sweat or something, or some of those symptoms or you get, or the feeling that a lot of women have when they get really tired, out of nowhere, it just hits you, and it's like, oh my gosh, I gotta lay down and take a nap for no reason. You know, those are those hormonal changes of back and forth, and everything is pretty out of sync. So that's what occurs during that. And that's what the transition looks like. So I'm not one that typically looks at menopause as a defining moment that occurs, boom, you're 1 year past a period, boom. It's not really. Your body's more like a transition stage, or phase, that it's going through. And women oftentimes can feel things happening and changes occurring way early, much earlier than even if they're still having regular periods. It's not always about that. It's about all of the changes that are involved with their hormones, that can start even way earlier. So looking into those things, understanding how the body works, and supplementing some of those hormones as we go along can add stability to your health and your life and your goals. And a lot of times I describe menopause as like a storm, a giant storm that every woman has to go through, and you're on your own ship, and every woman goes through, and you see other women that go through this storm, and you tell them, oh my God, like what happened to you? It's been 5 years since I've seen you, and holy cow, you're 300 miles off course from the last place I saw you. And they said, well, I went through menopause. I went through the storm, and it just took me, that way. And now I'm here to tell you that we can add some stability. We can give your ship a rudder and an engine, and we can't erase the storm, but we can add a lot of stability to your ship with science and understanding how the body works, sometimes medication, sometimes supplements and things, and tweaking things in your body. You have the ability to stabilize your ship, so you can basically stay on course, towards health and fitness and your goals, and not have to get carried off. So yeah, that's how I kind of describe it.
That's really interesting. I've seen some women that don't have flashes on it.
And obviously their hormone, their estrogen is doing the same thing. Is why would you, so how come some of us have those signs and others don't?
Okay. How come some people have those symptoms and
Right.
others don't have those symptoms?
Yeah.
Okay. So a good question. Basically, it's the same reason why, some women have some women go through like really difficult PMS symptoms, and their friend, might come up to them and say, "Oh, I don't know what you mean. I go through my monthly cycle and everything's just fine." And you just want to punch them in the
Right.
face, So like, yeah, it's
Uh-huh.
everyone's
Everyone's
very,
different.
very different, and I preach that
Mhm.
all the time. Everyone's
Mhm.
different. Even everyone's menopausal symptoms are different, and the way your body handles it. Some of it maybe is genetics. Some of it's related to your stress, which are other hormones that are like deeply involved with things. Your
Mhm.
your diet, your activity level. So much
Mhm.
is entrenched in all of this. It's impossible to talk about one thing without talking about activity and fitness
Mhm.
and health and diet, and it's all involved. You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. I think it all works together. I mean, our body,
Mhm.
all of our systems work together. And if one is not, it goes awry, everything eventually is affected somehow.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the great
Yeah.
thing is that there's things that we can do if we understand what all those factors are, and
Mhm.
we're not shy to talk about them. Then that gives us some power, and we don't have to just sit back and take when people say stuff like, "Well, Diana, you're just gonna have it. It's gonna be 17 years, and there you go. Just deal with it."
Right. Right.
Like, so
Yeah.
there's some power there for us.
Right. Oh, for sure. For sure. Um, if you, any of you ladies have questions, you can either, unmic yourself or, and just ask a question, or you can put your question in the chat too, because I know you all have questions. So don't be shy, please. Chris is really, really good at explaining all kinds of things, and you'll be, yeah, so please don't be shy. One thing I know I wanted to ask, so I get this, I wouldn't say often, but gotten the question about, okay, I've had breast cancer or some type of cancer, and I've been told that I shouldn't be taking hormone replacement because it'll
Yes.
bring my cancer back.
Yes.
So
Okay.
can you
Yeah.
explain a little bit about that?
So that is something that is said. That's another one where people just say stuff.
Right.
But there is some um, some small fragment of historical truth behind that. So
Mhm.
um, I guess the hormone therapy for women became more popular, I guess I'd say 35 years ago or so.
Mhm.
So back then, unfortunately, most of the clinicians were men,
Mhm.
and which kind of led to the problem, in my opinion. The,
Yeah.
most of the researchers too. So like,
Right.
so you would basically encounter as a clinician, a female would come in, 47-year-old female would come in, and they would be complaining of weight gain, mood, irritability, or hot flashes. They typically back then didn't complain of sex drive because that's not something people spoke about. But it didn't mean it wasn't there, but that's
Mhm.
typically not something they said. So that it's interesting because if you look at research studies from back then, it's never mentioned, or rarely ever even mentioned, which makes us assume that it was never an issue when you know it actually was.
Mhm.
But anyway, so uh, hot flashes, fatigue, brain fog, and as most men become when they're faced with a female that is complaining of these type of things, they say, "Oh, you're just hormonal."
Yes.
And that was your diagnosis. You're just hormonal.
Mhm.
You're a female, so females obviously they have estrogen, and that's about as far as the education went with it. So therefore,
Right.
you must need more of that woman hormone, estrogen. Which is so far from the truth. It's so wrong, because men have estrogen too, and men need
Right.
estrogen also, and women have testosterone and need testosterone. So, but we were very ignorant back then. So what they would do, a lot of the sources for estrogen were not always super clean sources, and some of them were synthetic forms of estrogen, or estrogen that came from all kinds of places and beings and stuff. So they basically would give a woman estrogen, relatively high levels of estrogen, and kind of forget about all the other hormones and just give them that. So women often, it was not very successful. Women would come back and I guess sometimes they might feel better, but like a lot of women would come back and say, look, I still don't feel good. This is actually getting worse, and the doctor would say, okay, well, let's just keep at it for another 6 months and see what happens, and because you obviously are a woman, you obviously need more estrogen, which isn't great. So they would flood these women, in droves with estrogen unnecessarily. And what they found statistically, they found that the rates of breast cancer were really skyrocketing. Okay, and if we know anything about breast cancer, we know breast cancer usually comes up a little bit later on in life, typically in that 40s, 50s, age range, but especially in that age range, like breast cancer was really skyrocketing. So there's a lot of types of breast cancer. Now we know this, there's many different forms, but some of the forms of breast cancer actually feed off of estrogen. Okay, and we're talking really high levels of estrogen. So higher levels than even your highest level during the month, during that cycle of your month that we were talking about. Right, so I'm glad we started with that. So if you're maintaining consistently super high levels of estrogen, then that's going to not create new cancer, but it is going to give if you have a cancer brewing inside of you, it's going to give that cancer more to feed off of. Okay.
It makes sense.
Yeah. So
yeah, I get that
so that's
question.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, I was just saying, it's
Oh.
a really good explanation for that.
Yeah, so it was a very easy leap for people to say, okay, there's all of this rates of breast cancer. We see a correlation between patients that are on hormone replacement therapy. Back then it was strictly estrogen therapy, really. And they even called it that, estrogen therapy.
Right.
So
right.
that we're strictly on estrogen therapy and breast cancer. So, it was very easy for people to say stuff like, hormone therapy must cause cancer across the board, and it's just not. It's not the case. It's just not the case.
Right. So I think some women that have that issue, they listen to their doctor and they don't want cancer, right? So they stay away from. And I get that. But things have changed, like you said too. And it does depend on the type of cancer. And yeah. So another thing that I get asked a lot, and I try and explain, and maybe you probably do a better job at it than I can, or than I do, but when as we get older, women complain a lot about belly fat. Like all of a sudden they're gaining all this weight. Why am I gaining all this weight? It must be menopause. It's my thyroid. It's all that. I mean, there's a lot of other factors that can, if you're sedentary, you have a sedentary job, you're not exercising, you're not eating right, all that can contribute to belly fat and things like that. But does menopause cause weight gain and cause us to hold fat in our bellies? And what can we do about it?
That is a great question. So menopause is a disruption or a change in the harmony of your hormones. If you imagine your hormones, when things are like a big symphony, with all the different instruments, you've got your stringed instruments and you've got all your instruments playing all well together. And when you transition from one part of the symphony to another part of the symphony, if that transition doesn't go just right, then things happen. So there's so much involved with that. But so menopause is by definition that transition period. So there are a lot of factors that go into that. One factor, just as an example, if those hormones, like typically testosterone and progesterone levels crash during menopause. It's just characteristically what happens. So your testosterone hormone has its own purpose also. If your testosterone crashes, testosterone gives you the signal for energy, motivation, drive, it being in an anabolic state, maintaining your muscle tone and your muscle mass. All of those. So if you don't have any of those things because your testosterone is crashed and your progesterone is also crashed, progesterone helps to regulate your circadian rhythm. So if you don't have a well-functioning circadian rhythm, then you can't sleep. You might be able to fall asleep, but you can't stay asleep. So those are factors that are really, really important. And if you can't sleep and you don't have energy, then who's going to want to work out? And then there you go. There's a lot of different factors in. So.
I'll be transparent. So this was how I met Chris. I was having low energy. I've always been a physically active person, but for me, it was low energy. I would just crash during my workouts. I wasn't sleeping very good, or I'd go to sleep and I'd wake up, and it was just that really. And then, of course, I was having the night sweats, and I was just like a mess, right? And so we checked hormones and other lab work, and I didn't have much testosterone at all. I didn't really have anything.
Yeah.
And so, so I do take some testosterone, and for a woman, it's very small amounts, very, very small amounts, because we don't need a lot of it. Like a man does. And I take progesterone at night, but before I go to bed, and it's the best thing ever. I sleep
it's like
very,
magic.
very good.
Yeah.
It is. It's like magic. So honestly, I don't take any estrogen, but yeah.
Good night, Diane. I keep forgetting you're here till later.
What's
I keep
that?
forgetting you're staying late.
Is this Alma talking?
I know, right?
Oh, somebody.
Night.
Alma, can you mute yourself? I don't know if that's her. But anyway, so I don't take any estrogen, and I think it was just because I'm a little bit older, and I'm feeling really good. I don't really need that, but everybody's different, right? So, like Chris said, we're all very different, and I do take a few things, which has really helped me immensely. So just being totally upfront, and it's the best thing ever. And not to say everybody needs to do that, but you can help yourself with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the interesting things about that too is that just in the past. There we go. I'm back on. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Just in the past 10 or 15 years, modern science has discovered something huge about understanding the hormones. So one thing that they've discovered is that, and this is going to sound crazy to a lot of people, but it's true. So in about 98% of cases, 99% of the estrogen that's in your body right now as a female, your ovaries don't directly make estrogen. It just doesn't. What actually happens is that your ovaries produce testosterone first, and then it converts some of that testosterone into estrogen. And that's a very important point, because in the case of now more modern and well-studied hormone therapy, if you do happen to need testosterone, which, in a lot of cases, especially postmenopausal or menopausal women do, you're killing two birds with one stone. If I'm giving you some testosterone, your body knows what to do with that. And it directly converts a lot of it into estrogen. So now you're supplementing both with, just with your testosterone. So you don't, a lot of times you don't need both, because you're getting.
True. Yeah. Good. Yeah, that's great. And because I get, a lot of women, all this belly fat and things like that, and it makes sense. Now, is it, and I've read this and I don't know if this is true, is it true that, or that the more body fat you have, the more estrogen you have?
Yeah. So that's another one that I've read about.
Mm-hmm.
And I've kind of like, there are studies that talk about that, or they kind of postulate about that. And
Sure.
in real life, I deal with people of all different sizes and weights and shapes and forms and stuff. So in real life, that's not, I've never experienced that enough in real life that I think, oh, if you weigh such and such, then your estrogen is going to be, no,
Okay, yeah.
not
I know
generally.
and that's why it's really good to have these discussions, because, you know, a lot of us, because Google is right there in front of us, we have these ideas and we go and we search and we find this information. And honestly, you can find, if you Google something and you really truly believe, you're going to find that something that's going to substantiate what you think. Right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
And so then is that true? And we all know it's not. That's like, is everything on Facebook true? And so having seminars like this and talks like this is really helpful, because there's some of us that, and I do Google searches too on different things, and that's one of those things is, you know, does body fat, you know, having more body fat percentage and blah, blah, blah. So, you know, it's just really good to, you know, have the clear facts. And so
well, what I like to tell people, is that, and I preach this from the very beginning. So people that just begin their journey of understanding how all of this stuff works, you have to start with a clean slate of everyone is very different. And you hear me say this all the time, like I'm always preaching that, because it's so true. And unfortunately, in Western medicine, we don't adopt that philosophy, like at all. Like literally, we are taught from day one in medical school that we are not all this, that we all work the same way. And that's just, it's just not true. And it cannot be more not true with hormones, you know.
Right.
So if you think about like how in medicine we do things, well, how does your doctor know to prescribe you such and such medicine or whatever? They use something in medicine that we call evidence-based medicine. So basically what that means is we take a large group of people, so 5,000 people, and we try and use some type of statistical analysis on whatever we're studying to determine how most of the people would respond to the medication. You know, but that in a sense it's trying to put everybody in the biggest box possible, when in reality it just doesn't always work that way. And if you as a person feel that you're worth it, you need to seek out someone that's going to take the time. And that's the problem, is that it takes time. You have to seek out someone that's going to take the time to give you enough energy and discussion and learning, you know, to the point where we can discover what's going to work best for you specifically, and only you. Because I would never tell someone, well, if you just do things the way Dianna does, then you're going to be perfect, you know, or whatever, because it doesn't make any sense that way. But that's what we do in Western medicine. That's how it works. You know, just do it the way they did it in this study, you know, in the Journal of Medicine or whatever. Those, you know, 4,000 out of 5,000 people did great, so that's got to be you. You know, and it's not always like that in real life. Like, it's not.
You know, I tell women that I work with that it's a journey, because they come to me with wanting to lose weight, you know, eating better, how can I do this? And it's all individualized based on that woman. And it's not, it's just like hormone replacement therapy. You know, it's just dependent on that person, but it's a journey. Those things don't happen overnight. And I think a lot of us want that easy, that quick, you know, we push the easy button and we're you
Yeah.
know, we feel great again. And it is a process and it's a journey. And I describe it as, you know, you're starting on one side of the bridge and you're crossing the river over to the other side, and who do you want to be, and how do you want to feel and look and all of that. And but it's having someone to guide you across that bridge.
Mhm.
So they're very similar, and you have to have all the pieces. You have to have your hormones in check, and then it's all about nutrition and
Oh, yeah.
physically. I mean, food is just, it's honestly that they say 80%. I think it's even more than that. It's 90% of your results, you know, and that doesn't mean that you can't, you know, splurge and do those kinds of things and live your life, but you have to just be mindful of what you're eating. And that's
Mhm.
going to help your hormone levels too, especially like cortisol and, you know, just different things like that.
Oh
But
my gosh, yes.
and I think we'll touch on that a little bit, but I do have a question here from Judy. Now, Judy and I have talked, and she has, and I'm just going to read this. She says here, Dianna knows I struggle with IBS. She does. Judy doesn't have a gallbladder anymore,
Mhm.
and her relationship with food is head scratching. So
That's
she
a
says
cute way to put it.
yeah, even when I eat light and clean, it feels like I just ate a huge turkey dinner.
Ah, that's interesting.
Yeah, even if I haven't had an appetite, which is most days, and then she'll just drink like one of those, I forget, I don't know how you say it.
Yeah,
but
those
the-
drinks. Mhm.
Yeah, those fruit infusion drinks for lunch.
Mhm.
Stomach cramps and bloats and feels uncomfortable. She's a teacher in 3 different schools, so you know, it's hard for her just to sit down and have a lunch. So, and she's super active, and, you know, we've talked a lot, and her BMI is good, but her digestion is so off. So it's like building some lean muscle mass is really difficult for her. And she tried the FODMAP, she spoke with nutritionist. And so, I don't know if you have some thoughts on that.
Yeah. So, if you don't mind, how old is Judy? Like, how old is she? Is she in that?
Judy, how old are you? You
If you don't mind
come
me
off your
asking.
mic. 56. I was going to say you're close to
Okay.
my age. Yeah.
And have you basically been suffering with these things since your gallbladder was removed?
You can come off mute if you want to talk.
So some of the
Okay.
things that are just kind of floating around in my mind right now. Oh, there she is. Okay.
Sorry, I'm like, Joe, why can't you hear me? Yeah, so I think it all started when I had my twins in the C-section.
Oh,
My
interesting.
stomach has never been the same. My bladder's never been the same. And, you know, I'm not a whiner. It's just, I'm trying not to have this fear of food, but honestly, I do. And it's because it hurts me.
What do
You
you
know,
describe that a little bit more when you say your stomach has not been the same and your bladder has not been the same? What do you mean by that?
I feel like since I've had the twins who are now 18, so it tells you how long I've dealt with this.
Mhm.
My first baby, she's now going to be 28, and that was like a regular pregnancy. And then the twins, I was at 7 centimeters, everything was ready to go, and someone came in the room and kind of stressed everything out. Actually, my ex-husband did, and so
Mhm.
my body shut down, my cervix closed up, and twin A actually was born with a hematoma. So
Mm.
it was hard to explain, but a resident actually did my C-section. It just wasn't expected. I was at 7 centimeters, ready to deliver naturally. And then this chaos happened from my ex-husband. So I think so much of it was stress. But I never took like Percocet or whatever they gave me because I was gonna I nursed them. So I
Mhm.
didn't take any pain medicine, and I handled it like a champ, not to brag, um but unfortunately I just never felt like I could go to the bathroom and then I'd have to go again, I'd have to go again, I'd have to go again. If we go hiking, I love to hike. I have to have a plan because I have IBS and this bladder thing now.
Yeah.
So it's, and
So
it all sounds very boring, but
no, 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 not at all. So you're from a urinary standpoint, you feel like you can't hold your bladder well, like you frequently like run into the bathroom for urinary issues, for urinary pee?
I can hold it. It's just uncomfortable, and I feel like I go, over the last 18 years a lot more frequently than I did before the
Okay.
twins. So that's a piece of it. And then the gallbladder thing, they scratched their head with that because I was, fairly thin, worked out. I didn't fit I was telling them that I'm in a lot of pain for like 5 years, and they kept poo-pooing it. Oh, it's probably this, probably that. My doctor wasn't very good about listening
Mm-hmm.
until I was on the floor and they found a bunch of
Oh, geez.
gallstones.
Uh-huh.
And because I wasn't a heavy set person or didn't fit the mold in their minds. So then the gallbladder thing, and then last year an emergency appendectomy
When was your gallbladder removed?
10 years ago.
10 years ago. Okay, so the twins were 8. Um, how big did you get with the twins?
Not very. I went 37 weeks. I was really healthy. I worked out. The twinnies were each like 5'4" and 5'14". So
Okay.
they were healthy,
They were good size.
babies, but
Yeah.
not like, it was like 11 pounds a baby
Yeah.
and placenta and everything. But I carried them well. I'm got a longer like waist, so like there was a lot of room for them. So a lot of
Okay.
people didn't think I was having twins. I didn't look really big. Um, and Bo was way up in my rib cage, so it was kind of like I didn't protrude a lot.
Yeah. So it's interesting, like a lot of women that do protrude a lot like that, they end up with what's called a diastasis, or they're
Mhm.
basically their abdominal muscles stretch out so much with the protrusion of the baby that they don't come back well together again. And because of that, they have digestion issues because your abdominal muscles hold things in, and they actually aid in you having regular bowel movements and stuff. So it's just something I thought about. That's interesting. So, and
Yeah,
it's more common in women that have twins or triplets and things like
Mhm.
that. And they have to have usually surgery to kind of bring those abdominal muscles back together again. Um,
honestly, after the twins though, like I'm not, once again, I'm not bragging or anything.
no,
I love Pilates. I was a dancer. It's like I love sit-ups. So, like anything with the core is really feels
mm-hmm,
good to me. And so I ended up, having a flat stomach. But this all
good.
just kind of, after the gallbladder, I think it got kind of weird, like weirder. But it wasn't the start of it. So, I don't mean to make this all about me,
No,
but it might help somebody else out
Sure.
too.
did you get nauseous? Like, is nausea a part of what you're feeling too?
Sometimes I get a little nauseous. I think I think it's this feeling like it might be like psychosomatic too. My sister's anorexic,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that there's a slight eating disorder possibility because of food shaming from my father. Um, I wasn't one of I have 5 sisters, and I wasn't one of the heavier ones, but some of them got a little bit curvy, and he kind of pick on them. And
No,
I
that's
was
not.
kind of
Yeah.
very sad. I was kind of the scrawny one, so I kind of lucked out, like I dodged his
Yeah.
criticism.
Mm-hmm.
But on that end, it's like that approval of like, if I just see like my whole staff, they'll be eating a bunch of donuts and there's no judgment, but I look at a donut and my stomach starts to cramp up. That's how
Mm-hmm.
intense that relationship was with food.
Mm-hmm.
I can't have donuts because I'm not supposed to have gluten, according to my IBS chart and all of that. So, and I honestly don't want one because it's like getting hit in the head. Because
Right.
it hurts
Oh.
just to look at a donut.
Oh
Um,
gosh.
isn't it
Yeah.
sick? I mean, I feel like, okay, I sound like I'm a total mess, but
No, 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 not at all. Not at all. I think there are some things that I might be able to add to that. Like one of the things that would be important. I don't know if like so. some of those stones, some of those gallstones, could have, it's possible that some of the stones could have been missed, and those stones could be left in the duct system, and or even traveled into the duct system going in towards the pancreas. And if that's the case, like, it can cause all kinds of weird digestive issues. And I mean, we're talking like stones that are like that, like little tiny things, you know, that that can, if they're not fleshed out appropriately, you know, it can cause some major issues, aches and pains, or weird things happening. Now, generally nausea is going to be the main problem with that, and cramping, and such. But so there's certain types of scans that you would do in order to look for those. You know, and that would be through a GI doctor, you know, going to see one of those. You know, one of the scans, it's called, you know, it's called an ERCP, is a scan where they kind of go in with a scope and then look into the duct system and then do like special camera pictures while they're doing a scope at the same time. So that would be one aspect you could look at. From another aspect, if this is truly, you know, more of just an IBS, like irritable bowel syndrome type of issue, the irritable bowel syndrome, it's kind of one of those vague diagnoses that we don't really know much about, or sometimes we just kind of throw that diagnosis out. But irritable bowel syndrome is basically when involved when the health of your intestinal tract is not, it's not strong and healthy and doing its job the way it's supposed to. You know, so you get this irregularity, and you know, it's just not in a good rhythm. There's a peptide hormone that's used to treat irritable bowel syndrome that works really well. It's called BPC 157.
P as in
mhm.
Paul.
B is in boy, P is in Paul, C is in cat. 157. And you can look up, there's a lot of really great research studies on how that works. You know, so BPC 157, it's a natural hormone that they discovered in the stomach lining of your gut. But it's the signal that your stomach uses in order to tell the stomach to replenish the stomach lining. There's so much
Oh.
acid there that your body needs to replenish your stomach acid. The stomach lining is actually the fastest growing part of the body because it's constantly being burned up and just has to be regrown, burned up and regrown. So BPC 157 is the signal that tells it to grow healthy and do what it needs to do. So they were able to take BPC 157, that same signal, and give it to patients with irritable bowel syndrome, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, and it really helped them out a lot, to the point where it cured a lot of them, or at least they were able to decrease their medication a lot.
That's helpful. I think the only medication my PA would, I like my PA better than my doctor, to be honest. So I go to my PA because we're tight, and she's had twins and she kind of gets me better.
Mhm.
But in any case, this medicine she's been kind of pushing on me is called Bentol, and I've been kind of a naughty patient and refuse to take it because I don't like. I'm looking at the side effects because I'm a supplement girl. I lived in Japan. I'm more of a omega-3, D3. I do all the supplements, and when I look at a medication like Bentol, it's got some pretty nasty side effects that I'm not willing to risk having worse symptoms, if
Mhm.
that makes sense. So I refuse to take it, and she kind of gets annoyed with me. But I feel like I'm the boss of my body, and I don't want to take it if it sounds like it's gonna cause like severe diarrhea. I'm like, why would I want to take that when I already
Yeah, if you
get
have
that?
IBS, yeah, why you? Yeah.
It's like, no, thank
So
you.
I think I don't. So I never get offended by stuff like that. Like if a patient, if I really believed that medication would be the best thing for you, and you're telling me you don't feel comfortable taking it, then that means A, I'm wrong, which is okay, you know. Like, I don't mind being wrong. Or B, I didn't explain the benefit of it enough that makes sense to you, or C, I didn't listen to what you're actually saying and what you want out of your health and your life, you know. So all three of those still come back to me, or D, I just need to be thinking about something different. Maybe there's other options out there that might fit you and your lifestyle better. So
As an educator, I'm so like a child in a lot of ways where I'm a sponge. I love learning,
mhm.
and so I'm not closed off. But I feel like sometimes patients are not heard, and they're just medicated. And I'm a little
Absolutely.
I'm very anti that, and that's my Eastern Japan, being their green tea girl.
Hmm.
I have a hard time with pushing out these. I don't want anything in my medicine cabinet except supplements. And so far, other than my migraines, I get occasionally I'll take an Excedrin every now and then. I really don't take anything. And Bental, if you look it up, it's got some pretty funky, causes some stuff.
Hmm. Oh
And I
yeah.
already have that stuff. So
Yeah.
being
So yeah, I'm totally with you. I'm
anything
totally with
natural
you.
like what you suggested,
Yeah, I'm
I'd
totally
be
with you.
willing to look into it. Are there side effects with those natural
No,
hormone?
no, then as a scientist, I struggle with you answering no to something, but with BPC 157, literally, there's like no. So they've done studies to try and figure out what is the highest dose we could give someone that would hurt someone, and they got tired. They just stopped. They're like, okay, look, we just give up, like, because it's so safe,
If I bring
so.
this up to my PA, will she know what it is? No, I'm sorry.
Probably,
I really feel like I
probably not.
educate them
They might,
sometimes.
yeah, and sometimes you have to. Sometimes you have to. But at being an educator, being an educator yourself, you know the importance of having an open mind, and
Right.
that's what education and growing up in academia is like. So from your standpoint, I think it's going to be important for you when it comes to Western medicine to not completely shut it off and say, "Oh, I don't want to hear about it." If it comes from a prescription, I can't. You don't want to do that either. But you want to challenge the people that are supposedly the experts in it to really describe what that's for. Does it make sense? Am I just putting a band-aid on a shotgun wound, or is this actually going to fix me? Because that's what I'm after. I want to fix me, you know, and challenge them to actually educate you on that, or talk to you about that. And if they can't, and most of them can't, but if they can't do that, then yeah, you have every right to be like, no, screw you, I'm not doing it.
Well, that's why I wrote scratching my head, because
Yeah.
I've done everything they've told me except the Bental, FODMAP, spoke with a nutritionist. Um, I go off the rails sometimes, and I do the sugar thing. I admit it. But when
Yeah.
I have eaten clean even, and my stomach does it, then I scratch my head, because I think it's not the sugar, it's not this, it's not that.
Mhm.
But the reason I wanted to ask this question, I do think it'll help with the discussion of Western medicine, Eastern medicine, and what women are told a lot. I think we're told,
Right.
like you said, oh, you're going to have this, just like, your mother had her gallbladder out at
Right.
47, and this
Mhm.
is going to happen. And yeah, it did happen to me, but she also was a smoker. I'm not. She also, we're
Mhm.
so different night and day with our health habits. I'm kind of a workout nut, and
Sure.
everybody. I guess one of the discussion maybe to help women be told you don't have to do everything your doctor tells you either. It's okay to
Yeah.
question it.
It's
Right.
okay, and if they're good medical people, they should accept that and encourage that, because I'm tired of people just saying stuff out there without really
Mhm.
Yes,
backing it up, or helping to make it relevant, to what's going on in your life.
and
It's
Right.
important, and
to
you're
be
worth
our
it.
own
You're worth it. You're worth
advocate.
getting the time to understand those things.
Right. And I feel like I've had to really advocate for and even when they didn't believe me, about my stomach, and then they, oh gosh, you've got these huge gallstones. And I'm like, yeah, I've been telling you,
There.
until I basically collapsed in the clinic. Seriously, I had to lay down on the floor. I couldn't take it anymore. And I gave birth to twins. I mean, I'm strong. I'm not, but I
Right.
was on the,
Yeah.
it took 5 years. And I'm kind of, I'm very vocal with you right now, but I'm a very passive personality. I'm not demonstrative kind of person. And I think they don't pay attention to you when you try to speak, and
Mhm.
I haven't felt heard, I guess. So thank you so much for your input.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Great.
I hope you do continue to advocate for yourself and continue to push, because what happens if we don't do that, for the people out there that don't, what happens is that unfortunately the medical system is not designed to care or advocate for you. And what happens is year after year, you continue to suffer with the same thing, and it doesn't get any better, and sometimes it gets worse. And you only get one life, you know? I mean,
Right.
so so I'm thank you so much for coming on and just talking about this, and hopefully it'll encourage people to advocate for themselves and ask questions and learn more and look outside the box too, because the more our practitioners, our medical people out there are not going to be pushed to think
Right.
outside the box unless we push them.
Mhm.
And thank
Yeah.
you both. Thank you, Diana and Chris.
Oh, welcome.
Yeah.
Thanks for the question. I mean, that I saw you messaged me on Messenger, and I wanted to ask Chris. This is like perfect timing. So this is great. Yeah. And also, ladies too, if you guys have some questions, please feel free to put them in the chat or come off of your mute. One thing I wanted Chris to just talk about briefly, and then I guess we've been on for almost an hour, but cortisol. I mean, we need cortisol in our bodies, but I talked a lot about getting enough sleep. I mean, that's a huge thing, is making sure, especially women, at least 7 or more hours of sleep, every night. And then when you're having night sweats and you're having all these hormone changes, you're not sleeping. So your cortisol, the stress levels are high, and it causes a cascade of a lot of things. And so maybe just explain what cortisol is, why we need it, and maybe,
Okay. So yeah, that's a big one. So yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
So okay. So cortisol is a steroid hormone. Okay. I talk about this in one of my videos. I have a YouTube channel that I talk about, it's Real Science with Neal. And then to my wife's recommendation, I started a TikTok.
Oh, you did.
Yeah, I have a TikTok. So I talk about little things. Sometimes it's hard for me to say anything in less than 3 minutes, but I try.
Right.
So,
I can't see you doing that, but
yeah, it's hard. It's hard. So cortisol is a steroid. You have a lot of steroids in your body. Steroid, when people say oh my gosh, steroids, don't say that word. It's a bad word. It's not. There's a lot of steroids in your body.
Right.
Estrogen is a steroid, testosterone, cortisol, melatonin. There's a bunch of them. So cortisol is a steroid that is produced by the adrenal glands, your adrenals. And your adrenals are 2 little glands that sit on top of your kidneys. But they're a major part of what's called your neuroendocrine system. The neuroendocrine system is a communication between your brain and your hormonal system. That's your endocrine glands. Okay, so your endocrine system, or your glands, your hormones, it's important to understand that the hormones are just signals. They're messages, they're texts, they're emails, they're letters. All the hormones are kind of different, but they're all signals. They don't do anything. Like a letter doesn't do anything by itself. The letter is a message that goes from one place to another place to tell someone at another place to do something. Okay, so the brain is involved on a cognitive level. The brain is involved with hormones and speaking to the endocrine system to pass these letters and messages out, you know, and so that's a part of the whole symphony that I was talking about. So cortisol is a big one. But what's interesting about cortisol is that cortisol, more than most of the hormones that are involved, are directly connected to it's directly connected to your outside world. So cortisol being from the adrenals, hence the word adrenaline. So that's like your fight or flight, right? Fight or flight nervous system is connected to that. That's your sympathetic nervous system. So we're talking sympathetic nervous system, adrenals, adrenaline, stress. It's very much connected into this whole world. So you do have to have certain healthy levels of this in order to get through an appropriate level of in your day, you know. But what the problems that we usually hear about or usually suffer from are when your cortisol levels go too high. Okay, so in your outside world, you lose your job, or you have marital issues, or you know, your car breaks down or something like that. Like those are outside stresses that affect your fight or flight, your adrenal glands, and your production of cortisol. Okay, so this affects in a sometimes a very complicated way. It affects the whole symphony of hormone balance. So that's why if your stress levels are high, like everybody knows that everything's affected. You don't sleep as well when you're stressed, when you're really stressed. Okay. We even see changes in hormone balance between your testosterone and estrogen. You know, people get more acne, you know, when they're stressed. They get water weight gain. They hold on to fat in a different way. Now it's even worse when you're at persistent levels of stress for months at a time, you know, and the symphony changes and it gets more distorted and it's just not quite sounding right. That's probably the best way I can describe it. But one of the interesting things is that we can supplement that in a way. Your DHEA is one of the building blocks of cortisol is DHEA, and that's a building block of a lot of different steroid hormones. Okay, so what happens is that if your body only has a given amount of DHEA to build hormones with, and if your stress levels go through the roof all of a sudden, you know, your body is driving to want to make more cortisol to try and work with that. You only have so much in the pot that you can work with. So you get what I've termed DHEA steal. So your cortisol is stealing that DHEA away. So guess what? Your other steroid, melatonin, that helps you sleep, it doesn't have very much DHEA to work with. So you don't get your sleep hormone because it's stolen away from your stress. You know, and other hormones have the same effect. So it's an interesting change in your balance, you know, because of this.
There's a lot of stress in the world, and some of it we don't have
Control over, you know, the whole COVID thing and all the stress, and you know, we had to change, and now it's still there, but it's not as, you know, I don't know what to say. I guess it's getting too late, but so now we're changing again to go back to the old way of doing things, and so we're stressed, right?
Yeah.
And
Well,
those
one of the
and
things
so,
we can do about that is to supplement with a little bit of DHEA, even 25 milligrams of DHEA. It's very cheap. You can find it on Amazon or anywhere. You know, especially during times of stress, the body really does well with that. You know, if you take too much DHEA, you want to be careful about that. Then your body will start building too many hormones, and you don't always need that. That also will mess up your symphony too.
right,
You know?
right.
So we have to but 25 to 50 milligrams of DHEA during times of stress is actually a nice add-on.
Right, right. Well, thanks. That comes up too, because that's a whole cascade too, and the whole not sleeping and the stress and, in the world.
It's
And
all connected.
it is, and it's easy to say, you can control the things that you can control, and there's some things that you just have to let go. Much easier said than done. So, but yeah, I mean, so to decrease the stress in your life, right? It's things of taking care of your body, eating well and exercising. We talk and talk and talk about that, and trying to, getting enough sleep, all of that. Meditation, that's another one.
Yes.
It just yoga,
Hmm.
massage, really taking care of yourself. And for women, that's hard because we're always the caregivers. We take care of everybody else, and then we don't take care of ourselves. And so I talk a lot about carving out that time for yourself. Maybe it's 3 days a week. You carve out a couple hours just for yourself, and don't look at it as being selfish. But if you care for yourself, you're going to be a better mom, and you're going to be a better grandma. You're going to be a better wife, girlfriend, whatever it is, employee, coworker, because you're taking care of yourself. And then that stress, level comes down a little bit too. Life is full of stress. We're always going to have it. It's never going to go away. But what are some things we can do to deal with it? And healthy things, right?
Yeah. And your hormone balance is designed to assist you with that and really make that easy for you. So if your hormones are out of balance, it's going to be 10 times harder dealing with stuff just in general. So I always recommend people get their hormones checked. But
Yes.
still, like you said, carving out the time, a lot of times it doesn't have to be as much time as you think. Like if you one of the things I used to do when I was in school, I would go outside for a smoke break. And when I was really stressed, and I don't smoke, I would just go outside and just stand there and breathe and look up at the sky and just watch the cars go by. Or I would sit in my car and listen to like one song, you know, and I've kind of continued like that, when I'm stressed or whatever. I call it going on vacation or putting your brain on vacation, even if it's
Right.
just 5 minutes. Like,
Mhm.
you go and you get to work or whatever, and before you get out of the car, you're in your parking spot, so you don't have anything to think about, and you can just take 5 minutes and put some instrumental music or something on your phone and look at, and everything's on our phones nowadays. Like, you can look at like a beach scene, and it's amazing how if you just stare at that beach scene and listen
Mhm.
to instrumental music or reggae beach music or something, like how
Yeah.
mentally your brain can go there for just 5 minutes. If that changes and relaxes you for an hour or two, that's a pretty big deal. That's better than Xanax. And a lot of times, like,
Yes.
a lot of times that can really, doing that maybe 3 times a day, can really make a big difference. And it's only just 5 minutes. The brain's
Oh,
a
wow.
very, very powerful thing.
It is. Oh, it certainly is. So,
Yeah.
um, yes. Does anybody have anything? Any questions? Judy says she sits in her car instead of the teacher's lounge.
Yes. Yes.
That's
That's
awesome.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do. I like to walk outside and, uh, yeah, for sure. So, well, if nobody has anything, Chris, did you have anything that you wanted to end with?
Yeah, so just to kind of wrap it back around
Yeah.
to menopause,
Yes.
everyone's very different, but menopause as it's defined has certain characteristics about it, and our body's trying to take us in a certain direction. So understanding that and understanding what tools we have out there, what avenues we can take, and who out there is going to help keep us on track towards the goals that we're looking for is really, really important. A lot of that, because menopause is a hormonal transition, a lot of that has to do with checking out your hormones. And all of that is involved with your diet, your exercise, activity level, your lifestyle, stress, like your medical health with other things that are going on. It's all together. So it's important to have someone that's willing to work with you and talk to you with
Mhm.
all of that. Dianna is so great at what she does because of all of her experiences, not only in medicine, but in health and fitness and
Mhm.
general lifestyle, all of it all together cannot be separated from one another. And when you try and go the avenues of just like, unfortunately, I hate to say this, but unfortunately, if your doctor isn't familiar with all of those things, they give you these answers like, well, just eat more salad, you'll be fine. It's like, no, it all goes together. We have to look at all of
Right.
it. So
Right.
I know she's here for you and she's wonderful at what she does.
Thank you.
We work together all the time. I'm here for you. You can reach me on my webpage, vivohealthsolutions.com. We do free consultations. I'm happy to talk to you and help you out in any way I can.
Great, great. We have one more. Here's a good one for you. One more question and then we'll go. Do you think high sugar intake affects hormones, which in turn worsens menopause symptoms?
Do I think high sugar? I guess you'd have to define how high is high.
Right.
Because my goal when it comes to hormone optimization is to get the body to hormones set the mood that your body's in. So if we all think back to when our machines really worked awesome, let's say 21, 22, 23 years old. I was active, I was fit, I could eat whatever I wanted. Nobody was on any kind of crazy diet. If I wanted to work out, I did, and it showed. And there was no high sugar, whatever, like don't eat carbs, whatever, like keto diet. It just didn't happen. We just ate whatever wasn't nailed down and we were fine. So
Right.
so if things are truly dialed in, that's all a matter of tuning. You can achieve that same level of tuning at any age. And that's what I do for people at any age. So I would say no, high sugar intake it doesn't really direct your hormones per se. I would say being hormonally out of sync will absolutely affect how your body responds to sugar. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I hope that makes sense.
She also said 2 female doctors
Of hers both gave her the same response to my questioning hormone replacement therapy, HRT, since I have my uterus and ovaries and offered none.
That's awesome. Wow, that's wow. Yeah, that's really ignorant. Yeah, that's bad.
Yeah.
You would have to like do labs and really look at things and actually ask questions like, hey, how do you feel? That's every single time I talk to every single one of my patients. How do you feel? How do you feel? Because it matters.
It does. Yep.
Yeah, if my job, God, oh my, wow. Yeah, I mean, that's literally, it's like saying if you work if someone comes in and says, I have stomach acid problems, and you say, well, no, you don't. You have a stomach, so you're fine. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry about that.
I know, it's crazy. So
Yeah.
and it's really sad because I worked in the healthcare field and I saw a lot of that happen and it's just so tough. And we all are using that healthcare system. We need it for certain things, right? But it's not the end all be all, and you just have to be a well-informed patient and question things. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. And if you are with a provider that you're not, meshing with, then find somebody else. Yeah, for sure.
Well, Western medicine is good. They're not awesome, but they're good at helping you if you're really sick or if you have something broken. But helping you to feel awesome or to be the best that you can be, it's like going to Jiffy Lube and you're taking your car there and saying, I have a 51-year-old car and I'd really like for it to drive the way it did when I first got it. Man, it just sounded so good and it handled so well. And like that mechanic is going to look at you and say, look, lady, you got 10 minutes for an oil change. You know,
Right.
you can make it back and forth to the grocery store just fine. You're fine. You don't need it. You know, so it's just, and it's just, it's different. We're not trained to
Right.
think about that and answer those questions, because literally we have 6.5 minutes per patient.
Right.
And we don't have the time
Ridiculous,
for it, you know,
Yeah.
and so you have to go to a performance medicine
Yes.
specialist, like what I do, you know,
Mhm.
and you have to go to a specialist, you know,
Right.
and they'll say, oh yeah, we do that all the time. I worked on a car like that last week and it's driving awesome, you know, but we got to work on this, and
Mhm.
how does it drive and what does it feel like, and you know, we dig into all that stuff because that's what we do, you know, and
Right.
it's
Right.
different.
Very different. And so this has been fantastic. Um,
Yeah.
So what I will do is, this is being recorded, so I'll download it and put it out on Mind Body Beautiful. But also I will put in underneath the video, I'll put in links to Chris's website and YouTube channel and all that kind of stuff for you guys as well. I'll put my link in there too. And yeah, so Chris and I want to do more things together. So if you all have any ideas of what you want us to talk about, you can also message me on Facebook. You can find me in Facebook Messenger. Most of you know how to reach me. So, but I think that's it.
Awesome.
And
Thank you.
yes, can't wait
Thank
to
you
do
so
this
much for
again.
having me.
Absolutely. Yeah, people, yeah, this is great. I love your comments. You guys are great. So again, I'll post this on the page. You guys can rewatch it. You can send it to your friends and family, all that kind of stuff. I bet Chris will put this on his YouTube channel.
I will. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll put it
Yeah, this
on
is great.
mine. So
Yeah, thank you.
yeah, great. So you all have a great rest of your evening. And Chris, I'll be in contact with you soon.
Okay, great. Thanks a
All
lot,
right.
guys. Stay healthy.
Bye guys. See ya.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.